Welcome back, artists. I'm Wyatt Paints, and today I've got a feel-good holiday video for you. I've been sent a pre-printed Grinch ornament with the request to paint it ASAP. But before I jump to that, there's a little bit of business I have to attend to. I tasked you all to give me suggestions to name my brush, and you all came through with some great names. So much so I decided to give it the assassin treatment. That's right, 3 names. I would like to present to you Bristly Siegfried McLovin. With a name like that, I'm sure it's going to be a key part of any killer paint job I do in the future. Now I'm just about ready to speed run this Grinch. I'm going to grab my other brushes. Let's get started. My first step is to establish his base green tone with green black. Now, when I paint, I tend to like to go from the deepest or darkest color and work my way up through successive highlights. While there are other common methods, I find this method works best for me, as it takes less adjustments and less cleanup after each step. But when you use the darkest to lightest method, you have to have a strong grasp of where you want your deepest shadows to be, because you'll have to avoid these areas in later steps to maintain them. My first highlight is going to be German Camo Bright Green. Now, as I mentioned before, I had to pay attention to where I wanted to retain my shadows. So for the Grinch, that meant leaving good shadows on his lips, around his eyes, and around his hair tufts. These shadows are really important for the readability of the face. When you have strong tones like these, it gives the face a bit more of an exaggerated look, which for the Grinch is perfect. I then used this color to lighten up the rest of his fur evenly. Next, I jumped up to a Scorpina Green. Like in the last step, I want to maintain my shadows, but now I'm also starting to focus on the highlight areas, which will be all the fur north of an imaginary equator that's just under his nose. This overall will help draw focus to his eyes and add an interesting transition to the darkest shadows. The second to last highlight will be Livery Green. Since I was getting to the lighter shades, I wanted to be very reserved with this tone. While I went for full saturation on his cheek tufts, everywhere else I put this only got a whisper, especially on the underside. While I did want a bit of highlight on the bottom so that the fur texture was visible, so I kept my strokes light and perpendicular to the details so that I only caught the tops very lightly. My final highlight was light livery green. With this being nearly a fluorescent yellow, it's even more important to keep a light touch. So just a few touches on his maw, eyebrows, and the tips of his hair tufts. Remember, your final highlight should whisper subtly, not scream. So I went as light as I could, and as soon as I noticed color, I moved on. For the eyes, I used a trio of colors: Infernal Orange, Amber Orange, and Cygnus Yellow. Again, going from dark to light, so Inferno was up first. Now it's important to know that orange and yellow tend to have poor coverage properties, especially over green or black. So going into this, I knew it was going to take a few coats to get it where I wanted. Also, I wasn't particularly trying to avoid the pupil here, as I was going to paint them black later anyways, but it will save me a little time the cleaner I paint now. Once I had a good base of the Inferno, I moved on to Ember Orange. So for his eyes, I wanted the blend to yellow to be centered on his pupils. This will give his expression a kind of laser focus on whatever he's looking at. So to do this, I tried to keep all my brush strokes going towards those pupils. I did this because the majority of the pigment is going to be deposited at the end of your brush strokes. After about 2 coats, I was ready to move on to the yellow. Again, my strokes are always towards the pupil to maintain that color shift I was looking for. I finished these off with a bit of black in the pupil to clean up a bit of the overspill. Before I get too ahead of myself, I'd like to take a moment to thank my subscribers over at Patreon. Your continued support lets me know that you're picking up what I'm putting down. Thank you. If you would like to support the channel as well, you'll find a link to my Patreon below in the description. You'll also find a link to my Amazon wishlist if you'd like to send me some art supplies instead. Every bit of help to keep this one-man show going is appreciated. Now back to the Grinch. For his Santa hat, I grabbed black red, flat red, and bloody red. As with before, I started with the deepest color to establish my deepest shadow. While there are some areas my brush couldn't reach in the folds, as per usual, this allows me to let the texture of the model dictate the paint job. I have a little mantra for times like this. For every decision I don't have to make, it's one decision I can't make a mistake on. Ultimately, this adds to a more natural look for the model. Next up, flat red was focused more on the flat areas to give emphasis to where the light was hitting it. Again, I let the model dictate the placement here and just followed the flats. Finally, bloody red was used to punch up the tops of the folds to make sure this reads as a nice festive red. I stress this because if you don't, red can easily come out pretty drab or dull. So even though this was the final highlight, I went a bit heavier than I normally would have. Finally, I ended with adding spaceship exterior for the trim and pom-pom. This took a few coats over black to get full coverage, but like the red, if you don't get that coverage up, it'll look very dull. So I leaned into putting coat after coat until it was a nice bright hue. And with that, the Grinch was done, and my boy Grinch is looking mischievous as hell. Even though he only really used 4 main colors, using different shades allowed me to give him quite the dynamic look that I'm proud of. Now, since this is a short one today, I have 2 bonus parts to this video. First is a bit of brush rescue for my dry brush here, followed by some more of my sexy nudes by request. I hope you find them both interesting, and if you enjoyed this video, maybe hit that subscribe and like button. It really helps a channel like mine grow so that YouTube will start tossing some peanuts my way. Either way, I appreciate you being here and sharing this time with me. And as always, thank you for watching, stay creative, and try to enjoy the process. Time for a bit of brush rescue. So here you can see I left my dry brush out after painting and paint dried on the bristles. To fix this, I'm going to need 2 things. A bit of alcohol and a small square of the scrub sponge. I first start by dipping it into alcohol just to start breaking up the dried end paint. Then I rub it into the scouring pad in a back and forth motion. Be sure to rotate the brush every 15 seconds or so, otherwise you'll only clean the paint in one direction. After about a minute or so, I'll rinse this off in the IPA and repeat this until I don't see any more errant paint in the brush. Once done, I make sure to rinse my brush in water before the alcohol dries to limit the damage it can cause. Letting the alcohol air dry from your brush strips the hairs of needed natural moisture, which can lead to dry bristles. Also, since I'm not going to be using this brush anymore today, I made sure to use a bit of brush conditioner to make sure they stay hydrated. And that's how you rescue a brush. Why a sexy nudes? Today's sexy nudes, spicy chicken bulldog carbonara from Samyang. This is a Korean brand that's famous for a spicy heat and its chicken mascot named Hochi. Personally, I think that stands for hot chick. Nice. You could tell how hot it is by how many flames are coming out of Hochi. Here, she's just chilling in her bath, so it'll be spicy, just not ruin your day spicy. Inside, it comes with a creamy carbonara soup base and a spicy sauce packet. Now, if you want to ease into the spice, here's where you control it by only using half or less. But for me, I'm a freak, so it all goes in. Thankfully, this isn't a set your face on fire kind of heat. It's more of a grows on you with each bite kind of heat, so you can always slow down to pump the brakes. Now, if you really want to have a naughty time with these nudes, you're going to add in a tablespoon of butter and 2 tablespoons of milk. Now, I know what you're thinking, and it sounds crazy, like you're not going to be into it, but trust me, you try this once, you're going to be into this. Not only does it add extra creaminess to the soup base, but it has the added benefit of toning down the spice just a hair. But make sure not to add any of the noodle water and stir that bad boy up. If anybody looks at you strange for putting milk in your ramen, shrug it off, because that just means they won't ask you to share. So more creamy, sexy nudes for you. Enjoy.